and everybody's in it for themselves. Everybody's very short-term focused. Nobody has this fundamental attitude around evaluating businesses over a very long term. The way I would want to invest in a stock is the same way I want to invest in my business or in my life or friendships or relationships, right? I want to invest in something that's going to pay dividends, metaphorically speaking, for the very long term. And I didn't see that happening in my career as a stock analyst. Your clients were essentially hedge fund managers and mutual fund managers and pension fund managers, and they were often evaluated over a quarter or maybe a year, right?
Right.
So that entire field for me just really wasn't long-term an interesting thing. Plus the lifestyle, besides the money, the lifestyle pretty much sucks, right? You're treated well and you're important in this little microculture, but you don't have a life. So you've rented yourself permanently to the bank that you work for, whatever it is. And I didn't like that. But the good news is it paid really well. So the fear of being able to step aside and saying, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I wasn't concerned about the money side of it. I thought eventually I'll find my way. I might have to eat into some of my own savings and stuff for a while, but I knew that I could keep my cost structure really, really low in terms of, personal running my life and family burn rate of capital would not take a lot of money compared to most people in that field. They were so used to buying expensive stuff all the time and running up big monthly bills for their fancy tennis clubs or whatever it was that they were doing. And I didn't live that kind of life at all. So I wasn't really that afraid of it, but I did wonder, okay, well, what's it going to be like? How fast can I actually replace my old income? And that was really the dream for a long time, is just to get back to where I was, but with a much, much, much better lifestyle. And ultimately that took a long time, but I never quit. I never give up. I just keep going.
So the purpose of this interview series is I want to interview, people that, are budding entrepreneurs or they've been doing it a really long time. Just the aspect of like making it possible for people to realize that they can, do these things themselves as well. So maybe they connect with what I say, or maybe they connect with what you say. And so
okay, so it's like how did you get started? What did you learn? What were some of the successes and failures? Okay, I've done a lot of these, so these are awesome.
Yeah, so around those particular aspects, right? So that's kind of like where I want to kind of like take us down that particular path. So I want to start off with having you, say your name, say who you are, what you do.
Okay, so I am Chris Thompson. I am the CEO and co-founder of Mike Mandel Hypnosis. And basically, as the CEO, self-appointed, by the way, which is hilarious because, Mike is my co-founder and business partner. I run all aspects of our business, from marketing to finance to customer service to web design. I mean, I don't do all those things, but basically my role is to be in charge of everything other than the primary content guy. So my business partner, Mike, is absolute brilliant genius, instructor, teacher, extraordinaire presenter. And he's the guy I rely on to have just kick-ass content. And he relies on me to do all of the other stuff around turning this into a real business.
Okay, awesome. So where did you grow up?
I grew up in Montreal, outside of Montreal, a little in Quebec. I grew there and I was about age 10, at which point we moved to Ottawa, the capital of Canada. And I did all of my high school and my university education in Ottawa, and then only moved to Toronto later on when I was an adult.
Okay. So do you have any brothers or sisters?
2 sisters.
Are they older or younger?
One older.
Okay. And then, so tell me about what kind of schooling you did. What did you do for school?
Well, when I was a kid, I grew up, my dad was an engineer, mechanical engineer. And so, of course, I always looked up to my dad being this engineer. He could answer any science question that I ever asked him, or, of course, that's the way it seemed when I was a kid. And I wanted to be an engineer. And I was pretty good with math and physics and sciences and all that stuff. So I went through and did an engineering degree. And then when I started working in the field, I decided that I should probably, in order to be able to climb up the managerial ranks, I should do a master's of business administration. So I did an MBA in finance. And so my official education is engineering and finance.
Cool. So what was like your first paying job?
Oh, paying job? McDonald's, burger flipper. Basically, I worked on the grill in McDonald's when I was about, I guess, I probably would have been about 15 years old at the time.
Yeah. And then have you been like working like ever since then, or just like, because I like, for me, like my first paying job was delivering papers, right? I ended up
Oh yeah, I guess I did. I probably did a brief stint of paper delivery when I was even younger, but I wouldn't really call that a real job because it's the kind of thing that people got sick of it. And your family wanted to go on a vacation, or they threw massive quantities of flyers at you that had to collate for hours and didn't get paid. So I think I did that for maybe a couple of weeks and said, "This is crap."
a better use of your time, right?
Yeah.
So when did you first realize you were an entrepreneur?
Um, I guess I probably took the first entrepreneurial steps when I was very young. I remember a friend of mine, Mike, different Mike, not my current business partner, but when we lived in Ottawa, we went around and handed out little leaflets because we backed onto this field where there was train tracks. And in the wintertime, I guess a lot of the mice or voles or whatever, the rodents would come in and start tunneling into the grass and sometimes even work their way into people's houses. So we discovered this and we went to all the neighbors and handed out little flyers that we were mouse catchers. And of course, my mom held on to that thing for years to show me later. And I remember that. It was hilarious. We always had these ideas. Well, we could go shovel driveways, when there's snow falling, we could go dig into people's driveways for $3 or whatever it was. So I was always looking for ways to make money on the side, but I don't think I ever considered that to be really entrepreneurial. It was just a side gig. Like, how can I make a little extra money as a kid? Even way back in the day, my best friend and I, who was named Chris also, we thought that we would get into importing. And back when there was this infomercial, I remember, that taught you how to import stuff from China or wherever overseas and then resell it. There was not even any internet back then, of course. So we had no idea what we were doing, but we were very interested in all of this. But I would say I didn't really truly know that I wanted to do this until much, much later, around 2008, when Tim Ferriss wrote the 4-Hour Workweek. And that inspired me to eventually to launch Mike Mandel Hypnosis.
So what was it about Tim's book that really made you kind of go, I should be looking at this different?
I guess way back, my father said to me, son, I see you being a CEO one day. And I thought, oh, man, I have no interest in that. I don't want to be CEO. Because to me, that meant like running a company with a lot of employees. And that's a whole lot of hassle. And I don't really see myself as a people manager. I'm a people person, but I'm not a very good people manager. And so I was like, no way. There's no way I'm going to be a CEO or anything like that. But when Tim's book came along, I realized, hold on a second. There's this idea that you could basically be the CEO of a very small business. And in some cases, you're a solopreneur. So you're just a CEO because you're the only employee, right?
Yeah.
That excited me because at the time I was working as a stock analyst. I had left behind the engineering career. I was working as a stock analyst in Toronto. And I was working really long hours. I didn't really see my kids that much. And, they were asleep by the time I went to work. They hadn't gone out of bed yet. And by the time I got home, oftentimes they were already asleep. So that was absolutely not the kind of lifestyle that I saw for myself. And my mother even told me, one day you're just going to get out of that industry and go do something else. So here comes Tim Ferriss and the 4-Hour Workweek. And I realize, hey, this might be the right answer. So why don't I start this side hustle on the, and I actually had a few things on the side that I was working on, but the most fun was absolutely the business with Mike Mandel and him and I doing hypnosis stuff together and teaching people stuff. And it resonated with me that this was absolutely possible. The cost structure was extremely low. The learning curve was huge, right? But that was fine. I was never intimidated by learning new things,
Yeah.
but I was absolutely finding it very appealing that, oh, the risk is essentially zero. I mean, you've got to buy a domain, you've got to set up some hosting, you've got to learn how to do a bunch of things, but there's essentially no cost of goods sold when you're delivering digital training. And that I loved.
Yeah. So so at one point, so you're working as a stock analyst, you got a couple side hustles going on, you start working with Mike around the hypnosis stuff. At what point did you realize that you can make that jump and leave the day job and kind of switch over into full-time entrepreneur business ownership?
I guess
And
it
what was
probably
that like, that whole process? Was it like scary? Is this like,
it
you know,
it was interesting. I wouldn't say it was really scary. At the time in my career, I was really becoming disillusioned with the Wall Street culture, or in Canada, they just call it Bay Street, but it's basically the same idea.
right,
And everybody's in it for themselves. Everybody's very short-term focused. Nobody has this fundamental attitude around evaluating businesses over a very long term. The way I would want to invest in a stock is the same way I want to invest in my business or in my life or friendships or relationships, right? I want to invest in something that's going to pay dividends, metaphorically speaking, for the very long term. And I didn't see that happening in my career as a stock analyst. Everybody was, your clients were essentially hedge fund managers and mutual fund managers and pension fund managers. And they were often evaluated over a quarter or maybe a year, right?
right.
So that entire field for me just really wasn't long-term an interesting thing. Plus the lifestyle, besides the money, the lifestyle pretty much sucks, right? You're treated well and you're important in this little microculture, but you don't have a life. So you've rented yourself permanently to the bank that you work for, whatever it is. I didn't like that. But the good news is it paid really well. So the fear of being able to step aside and saying, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I wasn't concerned about the money side of it. I thought eventually I'll find my way. I might have to eat into some of my own savings and stuff for a while, but I knew that I could keep my cost structure really, really low in terms of, personal running my life and family burn rate of capital would not take a lot of money compared to most people in that field. They were so used to buying expensive stuff all the time and running up big monthly bills for their fancy tennis clubs or whatever it was that they were doing. And I didn't live that kind of life at all. So I wasn't really that afraid of it, but I did wonder, okay, well, what's it going to be like? How fast can I actually replace my old income? And that was really the dream for a long time, is just to get back to where I was, but with a much, much, much better lifestyle. And ultimately that took a long time, but I never quit. I never give up. I just keep going. And so it was a challenge for sure. I mean, in the beginning, man, I'm sure you remember, many years and months and learning new things all the time, everything from, website DNS setup and custom domain stuff and WordPress and plugins and PayPal and autoresponders and Infusionsoft eventually, which of course you helped me learn really strongly. All of those learning curves were quite, at points, intimidating, but never for very long. Always being able to back up and say, okay, it's just one more thing. I'm just learning one extra thing. And as time goes on, I'm just going to master this and it'll be fine.
So I remember we were talking once before, you're like, so it always resonated, like that day that you like left your main job.
Oh yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
story. So
You want me
tell
to
me
tell
about
us?
that day. You're like, this is the day.
Yeah, what happened is, so I was working, and I had a really good boss. He wasn't a bad guy in any way. He was quite a decent guy by the name of JP, and I liked him in a lot of ways. But I knew that I was not going to be sticking around very long. So I remember putting an email out and saying, "Hey, I want to have a meeting with you to discuss, just basically book a meeting." And he said, okay, come into I can't remember what it was. Maybe it was like a Tuesday or Wednesday, 10 o'clock in the morning. So I had the plan ready to go. I mean, I'm going to walk into his office, and I had constructed a completely true script, essentially, to deliver a message to him that I wasn't happy anymore, that my life was being affected by everything that was going on in the work. Plus, I was in a fairly fortunate circumstance where I would say if I was in his shoes and I had to rebuild my team of analysts at that moment, he did not need 2 senior technology analysts. He would maybe need 1. And this sector was going through some tough times.
Right.
So it was pretty easy for me to go in and just say, look, this is going on in my life. I'm not happy. It's affecting my health, my happiness, etc. I want you to let me go. And I remember Mike Mandel and I were not like super close best friends or anything. We hadn't been in business together for very long. As a side hustle, we'd been doing this for about 3 years. And mostly that meant me shipping off CDs. And so I would wholesale buy from him. We didn't even have really our own products together at that point or training. It was a side gig to prove that I could do this stuff. Right. So I called him up one day and I said, Mike, I'm planning on asking my boss to fire me. Can you like pretend you're my boss and give me some feedback on my pitch? And so he says, okay, go for it. And I delivered the whole thing. And he said, that's phenomenal. That's really well structured. The only thing I can suggest is just practice it a few more times so you're super congruent in your delivery. Because I was stumbling a little bit, right? I wasn't quite confident with it. Right. So he taught me how to get comfortable and confident and congruent. And then boom, I went into my boss's office that morning and it worked just fine. And they ended up trying to say, well, we don't normally pay people to quit, and then they wrote a number down and slid it over and said, well, we'll help you out. And I said, I really appreciate that. I'm thrilled that you guys are willing to work with me on this and that you see things the same way I do, but I do need to make something clear. I'm not quitting. I'm asking you to let me go. And if that's not possible, I guess I'll have to go back to my job and we'll just continue on. And you can't, there's no way they can let HR, that's not okay. That's not a stable situation. So the response was, I've never told the story like in a live interview. This is cool. The response was, okay, yep, I understand, no problem. Let me get back. Let me get back to you within a day or so. And sure enough, I went off and had a coffee meeting the next day with my former colleague, Paul, who was just a fantastic guy. And I remember the two of us were sitting at a table outside of a local coffee shop. And I got the email on my BlackBerry, come on up, from the HR person. And I said, yes, this is it. And sure enough, I went there. My boss was there. And he just said, well, I guess we all know why we're here. And I smiled and said, yes, we do. And he said, okay, I'll let her take it from here. He shook my hand, took off, and they packaged me off because I asked them to.
Yeah, that's just amazing. So now, if you look at yourself, if you could go back in time to 10 years, go back in time 10 years, and you get an hour to talk to yourself. And what would you say? How would that conversation go?
Oh man, I think if I got back 10 years ago and was now talking to my 10-year younger self with the experience and wisdom that I have today.
Yes.
So that would be just 1 year before I left. I would say, absolutely do it. And remember that there's more to life than money, because even then my attitude was, I'm going to have a better lifestyle, but I was still catching myself working way too hard and not way too smart. No one works way too smart, but you know what I mean, right?
Right.
I worked not smart enough. I think I did a lot of busy work still and sacrificed some of the family time that I could have been having. I could have been doing a better job in overall balance, and I could have forced much more Pareto's principle into play. So only work on that 80-20. And I would have advised myself, hire people much sooner. Stop doing everything yourself. Do it yourself only long enough to learn how it works. And then discover much, much sooner when you suck at something. You're not a web page designer. You're probably not even a copywriter. You shouldn't do everything. You should just know how it works and then pay someone else to do it.
Exactly. That's awesome. So there was something I was going to say in the aspect of I only work on days that end in Y. Right?
Yeah, don't we all?
Right. And so it's just and I look at some of my past relationships, and they maybe could have gone better in the aspect of just how much I was out of whack in managing all that, right? So, but it never feels like work to me because I just love what I do. And at
Yeah.
the same time, there's an aspect of like figuring out balance, and just one of the things I love about you is just like your focus on your family and your kids and stuff like that. So how do you manage all of that? How do you manage like moving the ball forward with your business, and then you know finding that time for yourself, like your own personal downtime, and then with the family stuff like that. So just how do you manage
Yeah.
it?
Okay. So I'll answer that as hell as best I can. Feel free to push back and clarify, etc. But
Sure.
basically, first of all, I'm not perfect, so nobody is really, and I've screwed up plenty of times where I've caught myself, or maybe more like my wife has caught me working way too many hours in the public, like not public, but in the family area, like in the kitchen or in the dining room or whatever it is. I shouldn't be constantly on my phone doing work stuff in family time, in family space. So I'm blessed to have a wife
That's
who will call
good.
me on that stuff, and we can have open conversations about that kind of thing, and be like, all right, so how can I do better? Well, you should set up your own private workspace where that's where you do work, and stop working in the kitchen, stop working when it's family time, things like that. So that was one part of it, just being able to have the conversations. I would say the personal balance. I remember, I guess we're probably approaching 4 or 5 years ago, I made a decision where, here's what I noticed, Rich. I was starting work typically around 9 a.m. after I got my kids off to school. And I would work and work and work and work and be busy, but not necessarily productive. And then my plan was to, let's say, go work out around 2 p.m. And 2 p.m. would come along, or maybe 1 p.m. would come along, and I'd realize, I just didn't check off enough for my to-do list. So I guess I shouldn't go to the gym today because I haven't really earned it, etc. And at one point, so close to 5 years ago now, I realized that I should probably work on the biggest holes, the leakiest stuff in my life first. And in that case, I decided priority should be on my personal fitness and personal growth and those kinds of things. So I'm going to reorient the way I align my day. So I started from that moment only working from noon till about 3 p.m. And that left my mornings free. I would always go to the gym right away, get that done because that was important. I really wanted to get my fitness back. I was getting myself out of shape. And then of course, anything else, personal development, could be marketing training, could be reading a book that's interesting, any kind of personal development skills. I could do that stuff in the morning as well, and then just do the work in the afternoon. And that forced me, I for a while I think I worried maybe that's going to harm growth, but it didn't, because I still was getting the most important stuff done. I just had less hours to cram it into.
Okay.
So that was important. In terms of where I can still improve, I think I can still improve by carving up, making sure that I'm proactively spending more time with my kids, with my wife, et cetera, rather than it being any kind of reaction measure like, oh, gee, I feel like I haven't done my part lately. It's metaphorically, imagine if you have a front yard and you're always hanging out in your front yard, and once in a while you visit your backyard until one day you get there and go, man, there's a lot of weeds here. I'm going to have to do some weeding.
Yeah.
Get in there every day, right? Proactively. Don't wait for it to be a mess.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you said that really resonated with me, which is like something that I could probably implement and work on, is just having your zones, right? So
Mhm.
this is a no work zone, right? If I step into the zone, then I'm not doing work, right? And so keeping your sleeping area, your eating area, your family area, and your work area kind of like separate, right?
Yeah.
And then knowing when you can, like, if you go into the zone, then you're that's the work zone, you're doing work.
Yeah.
Um, so that was really awesome. Cool. Well, so how can people get a hold of you?
Well, the easiest way to find me, first of all, my email address is just chris@mikemandelhypnosis.com. So that's the easy way to reach me by email. And then I tend to hang out mostly on Facebook. So you'll find my Chris Thompson profile or public figure page, and you can always send me a message there. That's two easy ways to reach me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy day and sharing your thoughts and insights. And I really appreciate that. And let's have another conversation.
You bet.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks.
Hey, thank you for watching this interview with the Beyond W2 Entrepreneur series. And if you like this content, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, turn on notifications so that you get information about our next upcoming interview. And if you really like this content, really the best thing you can do is share it, and share it with somebody that might benefit from the information. And if you want more information, please go to beyondw2.com and join our community there. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the next interview.